At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard of the reputation, heard the reputation of Jesus, and said to his servants, "This man is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead. That is why mighty powers are at work in him." Now Herod had arrested John, bound him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip. For John had said to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." Although he wanted to kill him, he feared the people, for they regarded him as a prophet. But at a birthday celebration for Herod, the daughter of Herodias performed a dance before the guests and delighted Herod so much that he swore, not smart, he swore to give her whatever she might ask for. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was distressed because of the oath and the guests who were present, he ordered that it be given, and he had John beheaded in prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who took it to her mother. His disciples came and took away the corpse and buried him, and they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. The crowds heard of this and followed him on foot from their towns. When he disembarked and saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, and he cured their sick. I I hadn't it was a long time before I caught that connection, like that Jesus had just heard of John the Baptist's death and was basically wanting some space to grieve, like and but then the people are following and he has pity on them. I don't know. I hadn't made that connection of what was going on in him at this time until more recently. When it was evening, the disciples approached him and said, "This is a deserted place and it is already late. Dismiss the crowd so that they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "There is no need for them to go. There is no need for them to go away. Give them, give them some food yourselves." But they said to him, oops, but they said to him, "5 loaves and 2 fish are all that we have here." Then he said to them, "Bring them here to me." And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he said the blessing, broke the loaves, and the two wait, broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. They all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up the fragments left over, 12 wicker baskets full. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, not counting women and children. Then he made the disciples get into the boat and precede him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat already a few. Oh, hang on. Okay, sorry, technical difficulties. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the 4th watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." After making the crossing, they came to the land of Gennesaret. When the men of that place recognized him, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought to him all those who were sick, and begged him that they might touch only the tassel of his cloak, and as many as touched were healed. So, this story here, there's two things that kind of jump out at me. Um, was so back a few chapters ago, the first time when Jesus is in the boat sleeping and there's a storm, right? And then they go and wake him and say, "Don't you care that we're going to perish?" Right? And Jesus stands up and rebukes the winds and waves, and again says, "Oh, you of little faith." But it's interesting that they were given a next opportunity where they were in the boat by themselves, right? And there's a storm, and Jesus isn't in the boat, so they can't wake him up, and so they're probably getting all panicky. And but then in the middle of that, they see something else that is frightening. The first time they know it's Jesus, they are waking him up. They know what to expect, kind of. This time, something frightening approaches in the middle of a storm, and then they realize that Jesus speaks and says, "It's me." And sometimes in my life, there's been many times, the longer I walk with the Lord, that there are times something seems frightening, and it turns out that it is something that the Lord is doing, um, or or it is showing me a side of the Lord I didn't understand. Um, and so I just really like that parallel for me. And the other thing is, I like this, that when he says, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come out to you on the water." So that, because he wanted to step out, but I think that that's for me. There's several areas in my life I'm trying to decide what the right path is, um, but I'm waiting for the Lord to give me a clear yes, do this thing, or no, don't do that thing, kind of, because if I just step out on my own, I don't think I have sufficient faith. And until I really know that the Lord is the one um, leading, it's difficult to step out until I know, because I can't, even when I know the Lord is calling me to something, continually having the faith that's needed is a challenge. Because especially in the modern day world where there's just so many ridiculous scientific answers to everything that I'm so programmed with, it's so hard to just have faith. Um, and I think that I just like that. And even him, as you see, Jesus says, "Get out of the boat, like, come to me, go ahead." And he does, and he can't take his eyes off the other surrounding things and starts to sink. But yeah, I think it's an interesting parallel.